the Spaniard Pedro Harido. From 1508 to 1519, he participated in the conquest of Puerto Rico and Cuba. Between 1519 and 1521, he was a member of the Spanish expedition of conquest into central Mexico, where he built a commemorative chapel for the losses of the many that died during the 1520 Noche Triste. It was during this time, while residing next to his chapel, that he planted the first 3 seeds of wheat to be grown in New Spain. In 1523, he became a member of the Antonio de Carvajal expedition to Michoacán and Zacatula. While a resident in Mexico City in February 10th of 1525, he was granted a home plot within the city's trazas, where he holds the post of a doorkeeper, known as a portero, and for some time, he also became a crier, a pregonero, and became the guardian of Chapultepec aqueduct. In 1528, he heads the gold mining to Zacatula, and between 1533 and 36, he also is a member of the Cortés expedition to Baja California. Finally, during the 1536 and 1547, while still residing in Mexico City, he dies and leaves a wife and 3 children. Indeed, black conquistadores, by definition, fought alongside Spaniards against indigenous warriors. It was risking their lives, suffering in the field, protecting Spaniards, and killing natives that black men were able to improve their circumstances. And if enslaved, they fought for their freedom. The information provided was researched from the book by Matthew Restall.
Thank you, Maria, for that great info. Now moving on to the next icon of Mexico. His name was Vicente Guerrero. He was very important for the Mexican Revolutionary. He was born in 1782 in Tezcatla, Mexico. With his both parents, his parent was Pedro Guerrero, of African descent, and his mother, Guadalupe Saldaña, indigenous descent. Guerrero, at a very young age, he joined the family business, which they were arrieros, which in English translates to moulineers. They were working with mules. With this, he learned the lands, he learned how to manage and work with people, and he knew other shortcuts. Later on in his youth, his father, Pedro Guerrero, taught him how to fix firearms and how to build them. But when the war broke up of El Cura Hidalgo in 1810, Vicente Guerrero was ready to jump in. So he joined the army also in 1810 under Hermenegildo Galiana. Hermenegildo Galiana knew that Vicente Guerrero knew the lands in Tezcatla, Mexico, aka Las Tierras Calientes. So right away, off the bat, he puts him as his captain of his regiment. As the Mexican Revolution progressed between the insurgents and the guerrilla elites, they did the first constitution in 1813 of Mexico in Chilpancingo. But with this great victory, of the Criollo elites, tragedy has to follow it. That's how history is sometimes. So by 1815, we already have El Cura Hidalgo dead. We already have Jose Maria Morelos, who was in charge of the South with Vicente Guerrero, and his commander Hermenegildo Garnea. They were all dead. Paz. When everything was gone and there was no hope of the insurance to keep going and fighting for this Mexican independence, Vicente Guerrero never gave up. While other insurgents, they were giving the forgiveness or perdón from New Spain, Vicente said no. He wanted to keep fighting, to keep the fire keep going for the independence of Mexico. His father, Pedro Guerrero, disagreed. He even pleaded one of the kingsmen to forgive Vicente Guerrero's war crimes. But he responded as his dad and said, with his famous words, "Yo he respetado a mi padre desde mi juventud. Pero la patria viene primero." As I was very young, I respected my father. But my country comes first. Famous words from Vicente Guerrero. And that's what made him impose himself, not only in the military, in his military career, but also politically. Also, he was involved with Agustín Iturbide with the Treaty of Iguala, with that conclude that it will have a Mexican independence, with a European prince, also with keep the retention of the Catholic Church, and equal rights of the born between Mexico and Spain. But that's why not everything stops there for Vicente Guerrero with this treaty. Also, he was there for the treaties of Cordoba. He was also there. But this time, Iturbide kind of like backstabs Vicente in the back when he becomes emperor of Mexico. Because that was not the plan. The plan was to have Mexico and his independence. So Vicente Guerrero, with the help of Nicolas Bravo, they go fight against Iturbide, so they bring him down from his emperor ruling. By 1828, he becomes elected for president and wins. But like I mentioned before, he was born into the business of arriero, so he didn't get an education. One of the books that I mentioned in my biography mentions that he didn't learn his alphabet until he was 40 years old. So for him to win the election of being president winning the president of April of 1829 was really hard for him. So, but with the election that he won of being president in 1829, he didn't forget his roots. He passed a law so they can abolish slavery, because that was the whole point why the Cura Hidalgo was fighting. There was injustice between the indigenous people, African descendants, being treated as slaves. He didn't ever forget it. So he fought for that. Later on, he gave up his presidency to his vice president in December of 1829. Just a few months being president. So Vicente Guerrero flew back to the south where his roots were. Later, he gets captured and gets killed too. It's very sad that even though Vicente Guerrero got his roots and even raised all the way to presidency, everything came into an end. Back to you, Maria.
The second gentleman that we will be talking about is Gaspar Yanga. He was known as the first liberator of the Americas. He was born around 1545 in West Africa. He was said to be was a bold leader and a visionary who loved peace and freedom, and who was determined to articulate and reclaim the human right of members of his community. It is said that Yanga escaped slavery from the region of the Nuestra Señora de Concepcion plantation in 1570. He then led a bloody rebellion of slaves in the sugar fields of Veracruz. They escaped into the mountains of Orizaba, where he, along with his group of cimarrones, founded the first organized and developed Palenque thriving Maroon community, and also included a few persons of mestizo and indigenous ancestry. Gaspar Yanga, there they lived undisturbed for 30 years. Later the town was named San Lorenzo de Caralho, and ultimately it became just Yanga. Since 1986, each August, the citizens of Yanga, they have an ambiguous festival called Carnaval en Negritud, during which the rebeles paint the faces black, supposedly to remind themselves and others that the African people and people of African ancestry